There's some things in free agency that do surprise me, and one of those sort of happened the other night. I really thought Kyle Trask, for all the world, would look, and I'm sure he did look, to try to move on from Tampa Bay. I mean, this is a guy that, had some pedigree and a lot of success at the University of Florida. He was a second-round pick after the Super Bowl year, when the Bucs won in 2020, so his draft was 2021. And he was behind Tom Brady, and he wasn't going to play. And then Tom, retired, and it looked like he was going to get a chance to compete for a starting job. And then Tom unretired. And so Kyle Trask has spent 4 years on the sidelines, basically, during the regular season. And his total, production during that time is 7 games he's appeared in. He's 4 of 11 for 28 yards. Lots of practices, man. A lot of offensive systems he's had to learn, right? And three in the 4 years, I think he had a different offensive system. So a guy like that, you figure somebody must have liked him for him to go in the second round with the Bucs. Surely there was another team out there that was intrigued by him, maybe not as a second rounder. And he hasn't disproven that he can play, but the market must not have been there. That's all I can think of. Like Kyle Trask, who is liked by Todd Bowles, is liked by the Buccaneers, had to have looked around at least for a day or so. I mean, the legal tampering period began, over the weekend, but here we are, first day of signing, and Kyle Trask returns to the Buccaneers.
Well, the thing is you had 4 years and you really didn't show much because you weren't
True.
on the field at all.
There's no tape.
You had some preseason games, but
yeah,
it's probably one of those. Maybe somebody offered him a shot at competing for a backup spot.
Mm-hmm.
But here he knows the coaches, he knows a lot of the players, he's comfortable. A lot of it's not the same, but Mike Evans or Chris Godwin staying, and it's not apples to apples, but if you like the culture, you like the place, you don't really have any better offers per se.
Well, that's
my
the
guess.
key.
My guess is it was probably, hey, you can come in and compete for a backup job.
Yeah.
That no one's willing to go, hey, you're competing for a starting job yet.
Right. I mean, I at least thought that, and maybe this isn't out there, to be honest with you, but you would try to get yourself behind a wobbly starter, right? Mm-hmm. Danny Dimes did that, right? He went to Indianapolis. There's a situation where he might get a chance to start and play. Yep. He might be the starter for all we know. So you kind of look for that. And, there hasn't been really a backup quarterback market that's really kind of established itself to this point. I don't think, for example, Jameis Winston has a job.
Well, not all the starters are settled yet.
That's what I mean. You still have the Giants looking for a starting quarterback,
yep.
The Pittsburgh Steelers looking for a starting quarterback, and possibly the Minnesota Vikings could be an option.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right. You still have guys like Aaron Rodgers not signed, and Russell Wilson's making decisions now. And
exactly. And so, because of that, we're really not into, Gardner Minshew was let go by the Raiders. I thought Gardner would have been a candidate to come here. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's enough swag in this town for Gardner and Baker Mayfield. That would have been Minshew, the M&M boys. We had some Slim Shady in town, man. Let me tell you. But that would have been fun. But instead, it's Kyle Trask. And I'll say this too, and I like Kyle. I mean, first of all, he's a heck of a dude. I mean, he really is a good guy. He is, the quintessential, first guy in, last guy out. That's Kyle. When you look onto the practice field, when guys start strolling out, Trask is out there already working. He works his butt off. He really does. So that's the one thing he can control is his effort and his attitude, right? He has a great attitude. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, the Bucs have a young quarterback, who also has never played, in Michael Pratt, that they really like, and Trask will have to compete with Pratt this year to keep the number 2 job.
Well, are we sure that Kyle Trask hasn't been promised it's a competition for the starting job yet?
You think he's going to compete with Baker?
I'm kidding. I don't think he competed last time.
No, 2 years ago they called it that, but it really wasn't much of a competition. There's about 4 or 5 days. I told you the story where Dave Canales, who
Oh, yeah.
could sell vacuums to door to door if he wanted to, and probably make a good living. I sat down with him for about 20 minutes one time in Baker's first year, and I tell you, I swear to you, when I walked out of there, I said to myself, "My God, Kyle Trask has a really good chance of beating out Baker Mayfield." I mean, he convinced me, and it was kind of it was a bad week for Baker in practice. He threw a bunch of picks. It turns out Baker was just trying to see what he could get away with. But then after that, Baker got hot, and he was really good, and it was obvious that there was never a chance that Kyle Trask was going to beat out Baker Mayfield. But he's going to have to compete for number 2 spot now because they really like Pratt. Pratt ran a lot of scout team last year, did a good job with that. They got him off the practice squad from Green Bay, and they wanted to draft him. Green Bay did instead, and then Green Bay cut him. But the Bucs got him off the practice squad, and he ran a lot of scout team stuff, acting as the opponent's quarterback, and actually did a really good job. If you talk to the defensive players that were going against him on the number 1 defense, they said, this guy was a pretty good player, very, very athletic from Melbourne. I mean, he's in a great place. They brought him up from the practice squad. I think they activated him 2 or 3 times. And you do that not because you expect him to play, but it's a reward, and it keeps him from going someplace else. There were some teams that got a little thin at the position last year that would have signed Pratt to their active roster, and he didn't really want to go. But it sure helps if you're getting a game check versus practice squad money, which isn't bad, by the way, but it's not a game check. So they elevated him about 2 or 3 times to show how much love they have for him. And this will be a battle. This will be a battle for him and Trask to go at it for that number 2 spot. And look, I'm still surprised, and if you're a Bucs fan, pleasantly surprised. But the way Baker Mayfield throws himself around, he's been fortunate not to have gotten hurt in the 2 years he's been in Tampa. Yes, I'm knocking on wood, Bucs fans. But he's had to come out a few plays, right? Remember one in Carolina, and then Baker came back in after one play and threw a pick. Almost lost that game. I remember one in Indianapolis, I believe, a couple of years ago, down on the goal line where Kyle had to come in. So, Kyle's had spot duty. The most he played was, Brady's. I think it was his last year. They had things locked up. They won the division with an 8-9 record or something like that. And maybe it was 9-8, whatever the record was that year. But they played the starters just like a quarter, and then Trask played mop-up duty, and they wound up losing that game. But that's the most he's played. So, it's been a long time since he's been in the fire, except for preseason, where he's looked okay. But it's hard to judge guys because, who are you going against? Who's on your offensive line when you're in there? Like, all that's a factor. So the one advantage the Bucs have by re-signing him, they can take advantage of this kind of salary cap, loophole, if you will. Basically, Trask is going to get $2.78 million for this year, so 1-year contract. But he's only going to count the veteran minimum of $1.3 million because there's this thing called a 4-year player qualifying contract. And so somehow he slides into that, and because he stays with his former team, they're able to only count the veteran minimum, which is a great deal for the Bucs. And so that's another reason, right, why this kind of makes sense.
So here's the question, though. Is Kyle Trask now the first quarterback drafted by the Bucs to get a second contract?
It's a great question, and I thought he was, but he's not. Apparently, and I didn't remember it this way, but apparently Sean King signed a 1-year deal at some point with the Bucs.
Okay.
And so Sean was drafted in the second round, also out of Tulane, the last Tulane quarterback to play here. But Sean did apparently, as how I lean on for stuff like this is Greg Allman's great for this stuff. He's great because he was looking it up. He was thinking, this might be the first Buccaneer that was drafted by the Bucs to sign a second contract. And the verdict was that No, he was not. Apparently that would have been
Okay.
Sean King, and I'll take Greg's word for it. But he said that he signed a 1-year deal to stay in Tampa in 2003. So that would have been the year after the Super Bowl. Sean was on the Super Bowl team. He just didn't start, obviously. That would be Brad Johnson. So yeah, but it's close, but no cigar there. Only the second though.
Okay.
Player I think to be drafted and re-sign or sign another contract with the Bucs, but for a different reason. So I just I don't know how I feel about this. I'll say this: that Bowles has a lot more faith in him than I think most coaches would,
And maybe that's the reason he stayed.
and I think that's why he's here. I really do. When we talked to Bowles at the combine, he said, and I quote, "I love Trask. I think he's a good football player. He just came in behind Brady and now Baker. It's just kind of tough getting on the field."
Yep.
It's true, although, and it's been very limited chances in the regular season, but I don't know that it's a false picture sometimes, but I don't know that he's lit it up in preseason or training camp or practice. Has he gotten better? Yeah, he's really, the one thing he's done is he had heavy feet when he got to the NFL, and I think he's changed his body to the point where he's got a lot more. He's not a scrambler per se, but he's got a lot better feet and mobility, and is more nimble in the pocket than he's ever been. And so I think, again, he's a hard worker. He does everything he can to try to put himself in a position to play and be ready to play. And that's comforting to coaches too. But yeah, no question that Bowles is, one of the bigger Kyle Trask fans that I've seen. And I mean, he's another guy that was interesting coming out of college. I mean, to be drafted in the second round, even by the Bucs, is means that you had some value. He was one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC, went toe to toe against Alabama. Like, had some great games. A late bloomer. He's always been a late bloomer. This has been his thing. Didn't start in high school. Didn't start at college until took over for Felipe Franks, I think, in his final 2 years. So he's used to this path, but man, it takes some mental toughness. And I just wonder, like, for him, just a change of scenery, right? Like, go get in front of some other eyeballs and see what they see. But hey, it's musical chairs. You got to get one. That's the biggest thing. If he could play in the league for 8 years. I mean, the one thing about it is, if you never play, you're never exposed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but there'll come a time where he'll be called on, and
quarterbacks in the NFL are kind of like goalies in hockey.
A little bit, yeah.
There's only two per team. Like,
that's right.
It's musical chairs. Like, there's not.
That's right.
It's not like you've got 4 or 5 running backs in each roster, and then some in the practice squad, and I mean, there's a limited number of quarterbacks, essentially, spots, that is.
Mm-hmm.
And every year you've got new guys coming out vying for those spots. So, sometimes you just got to find where there's a chair and sit.
That's it. Don't let the music stop. And it used to be, too, there were more jobs because every team carried 3 on the active roster. And now it's almost certainly 2 and then 1 on the practice squad, because you can carry veterans now on the practice squad. So that's changed.
Yeah, kickers and punters are kind of the same way, too. I mean, there's 32 spots, and, and every year there's new kids coming out vying for jobs. So it's, where do you find your spot?
Yeah. No, you definitely better get one, because they don't last for long. So Florida fans will be happy, I guess. Maybe be calling for Kyle to be a starter at some point. I don't know.
The first game Baker doesn't do well, that'll be the chance.
Yeah, they're still here, man. They're still out there. People will be happy about this. I'm happy about this. I like Kyle. He's a good dude. He's just, I don't know if he can play, and frankly, nobody knows if he can play. We'll have to wait and see. The Bucs did not stop there. However, in free agency, they also signed defensive lineman Greg Gaines. You might remember that he has been on this team now. This is his 3rd contract. Each contract has been for the exact same term and money, 1 year, $3.5 million. So,
To be honest, I kind of forgot he was on the team.
I know, just death, taxes, and great gains. But yeah, as a free agent with the Rams, he's contributed 41 tackles and 2 sacks since coming to the Bucs. He's 28 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Can play the interior, provide some depth, and you need guys like that are not expensive and have experience in the NFL and can get you through a game or a quarter or
And
whatever
experience in your
you need.
system. I mean, sometimes for those depth guys, it's better to have someone you know than someone you don't.
That's right. That's right. Is exactly right. And he's not expensive. Obviously, $3.5 million for what they're going to get out of him. I don't think you're going to see William Golston back. He may retire, or perhaps if he thinks he's got another year. But they got to get some some interior depth. And like I've always said, like, you attack free agency as if you have to play a game before the draft. Make sure you address all your weak spots, your depth. Get that done. We saw them sign Anthony Nelson or agree to terms with him a couple days ago. You want all that depth because you that way you're not hostage to a position, and you don't reach for a player at a need position when you get to the draft. You just want to take the best guy. You really genuinely want to take the best football player you can. And usually it becomes the best player at a position of need. But if you can address all those needs before the draft and at least say, hey, if we got to go out and play now, we're going to be pretty good. And for the Bucs, getting Bredesen back, getting Chris Godwin back, they're going to have their entire, not just their starting offensive line, they've got their entire offense back. Like every player who finished the year last year or played significant time last year on offense that averaged 29.5 points a game with Liam Cohen, every single guy is back. I think that continuity is nowhere bigger than it is on the offensive line, but still, you're going to add to that, right? I still think they're going to get a receiver. They could use depth at some of the, at the center position now with Robert Hainsey going to Jacksonville. There's things they can still add, but that's that group and the continuity that wins in this league, especially on the offensive line, is in place now. And you just got to hope that, they don't have a fall off now with Liam gone, but at least the system is similar. So, that's the good news. The good news is that they've got players and it's the same players. Some of them are older, and people say, well, how did they get better? Well, you just get better because you're in the same scheme. Some young guys grow up, like we saw Jalen McMillan do at the end of last year. Bucky Irving got better. Maybe Sean Tucker burst onto the scene now. It's Rashad White's career year, contract year. We saw Kate Otten really step up when they lost both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So there's a lot of still upside, and then plus you're still going to have another draft and kind of help. Although I think most of it will come on defense, but it's been interesting. Like once again, Jason Light, with the exception of Hassan Reddick and a punter, his free agent signings are his own guys because your guys, and free agency is not a it's not a magic pill. You've got to draft and develop players, and that's what the Bucs have done well these last 3 or 4 years.
You overpay in free agency, and Jason Light early in his GM career won free agency several times.
He did,
and it didn't work out very well.
That's right. That's right.
And
we remember the Chris Bakers, and
you're much better off drafting players, developing them, re-signing the guys
Yeah.
And then filling in holes. They have a big need at pass rush. So they went and found Hassan Reddick to try to help fill that. And they're probably going to draft someone for that position as well.
They will. Mm-hmm.
And then they had trouble punting last
David
year.
Back, and
but they had trouble punting last year, so they went out and got a new punter.
Right.
They filled a few holes, not trying to overhaul their team through free agency.
Right. And they didn't reach financially, right? Because what can happen is, even if a guy is a free agent, you start getting into, $25, $30, $40 million a year or something like that. That's going to hurt you for a while if that player doesn't work out. They like these 1 year prove it deals. And, even though $14 million is a lot of money for 1 year prove it deal. I remember Shaq Barrett playing here for 1 year, $4 million and having 19 and a half sacks. And you wound up franchising the guy. And then he got a huge contract. So, those hungry players, even though Reddick's coming in for $14 million, guys like him that did what he did with double-digit sacks for 4 straight years, yeah, those guys are making 35 and sometimes closer to $40 million bucks right now. So he's got to be ticked off. He's not getting his bag right now, and they're hoping he's motivated to do that. But yeah, they didn't reach financially. They didn't overpay anybody, I don't think, for what they've gotten, and that's good. That's good. They had money this year. It wasn't going to be a salary cap crunch. I'm sure they reworked some contracts. We haven't seen which ones yet, but they had to have, or they wouldn't be able to sign this many guys. So, I don't know where it's going to go from here. I still think that they got to make a decision at corner. Is Jamel Dean on this team? Are they going to trade him? Is he going to be like Carlton Davis last year? Are they going to live with his, contract? And hope that he can stay healthier. He can play when he's healthy. He's out there. He can play. Now, he's not a ball hawk, and that's what Todd Bowles is called for. This guy cannot catch very well. He's had 1 interception, I think, since 2022. But with a pass rush helping the secondary, you can see him and others, playing much better. So, but they still have to. I still think they have to find some depth at the cornerback position because they lost one of their defensive backs in free agency, Tavierre Thomas, who was their best special teams player.
Heading to Minnesota.
Yeah, heading to the Vikings.
Yep. And then JTS gone as well.
Yeah, Joe Tryon, where did he get picked up? He's going to
Cleveland,
the Browns.
Yeah.
It's not a bad signing. Look, I never really got the idea that I don't think Joe was a bad player. A change of scenery might be good. He got $4.5 million, which is good for him. I think he was one of these guys that got really hurt by COVID. The last year of his college career was COVID. The Pac-12, at that time, they were the Pac-12 at Washington, were all but not going to play. I think they played 2 or 4 games that year. He opted out. He opted not to play during the COVID year. And then he went down to Arizona and started working out and preparing for the draft. Well, you gain a lot from playing football. And sometimes you lose something by not playing it. And that, I think that set him behind when he got to the league. And when he got here, there wasn't a lot of, they had their outside linebackers at that time. And then, he kind of was bouncing around to a lot of different positions. And they put him in some pass rush situations. And he did okay for the number of snaps he played. But when they turned it over to him and said, it's yours, he just couldn't get guys on the ground. Athletically, he's gifted. And he's a great kid. A great kid. Works his butt off. But I just think he's a good athlete. I don't think he's a great football player. We'll see. He's going to be playing with Myles Garrett. So that's not going to hurt. He's going to get a lot of one-on-ones, I can tell you that. And maybe he learned some tricks of the trade. And he's one of those guys that you go, oh, man, he didn't do anything for the Bucs. But, man, when he went somewhere else, he took off, I hope he does because I like the guy. He's a good dude. And I think he put everything into it. It just didn't get many results. Hey, I want to remind you guys, get on down to Breitling Boutique. Maybe you're a Browns fan, or maybe you're a Bucs fan, or any fan of the 32 NFL teams, because right now at Breitling Boutique, they're having sort of a limited time offer of celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary with all 32 teams' watches. These are Chronomat watches with the team colors on the face of the watch, the logo inside. They're absolutely beautiful. You can go on our website. You can probably see one that belongs to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not sure how many, if any, they have left, so get on down there quickly. And also, if you're just looking for a great watch, Breitling's been in business for over 144 years. They've been International Plaza for the last 5. You go to the mall, go to the center of the mall. It's upstairs if you haven't been there. Terrific store, unbelievable customer service. Spend some time there, man. Go in, they'll fix you a drink. They'll tell you about all their great watches, and you're going to walk out of there with something that you really want, a great timepiece on your wrist. And not just for yourself. How about for your wife, for your girlfriend? They have great sports watches for women as well. They're very durable, brightly colored wristbands, everything you could ask for there. So make sure you head on down Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall, and when you do, make sure you let them know that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. I was reading a Joey Knight story. It turns out that the USF Lady Bulls have danced their way into the NCAA tournament. They win their conference. Is that right? Their conference tournament?
That's correct. They probably would not have made the tournament without winning it. They were the 3 seed going in.
Mm-hmm.
And they take down Rice in the final.
Outstanding.
So for the 10th time in team history, school history, the USF women are going dancing.
That's outstanding. What a great program that they have over there in women's basketball. And yeah, look, I think USF is one of those places. We talk about the football program all the time, but women's college hoops is great. And the Final Four, not for nothing. You want a Cinderella story? How about if they danced their way all the way back to Tampa? Wouldn't that be awesome, man?
That would be. I mean, the women's Final Four is coming to Tampa.
Yeah.
And it's the 4th time Tampa gets to host the women's Final Four. That is the most of any building in history.
If you talk to anybody with the NCAA or women's college basketball, when they come down here, they absolutely love the Tampa Bay area. It's so great down there by Amalie Arena anyway. But at this time of year, where the weather is spectacular, generally in late March, even April, that's what it's all about. And man, the game of college basketball in women's college basketball, of course, has grown so exponentially with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and everything that's going on now in the WNBA. My daughter, who does not play the sport, is an absolute fan of all these ladies and follows UConn religiously. I mean, it's just she knows the players on other teams as well, and so we're hoping to get down there and catch some of that action because it's just going to be great, and the level of play is terrific. So good for Rob Higgins getting that game back here, and I'm not surprised because they do such a great job, and they love Amalie. They love downtown Tampa. Yep. It's changed so much, with the Riverwalk and all of that. It's just gonna be great.
Yeah, it's amazing the amount of events NCAA brings down here. The Frozen Four has been
That's
here,
right.
I think, 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
The women's Final Four. It's like the Amalie Arena and the Sports Commission does a great job putting it on. The fans love obviously coming to Tampa in a late March, early April timeframe. I mean, when you're living up north, who wouldn't? And it's beautiful down here this time of year. So yeah, hopefully USF can march their way through the tournament and reach the Final Four.
Did I ever tell you my story about the men's Final Four that was here, won by UConn?
I don't.
Do you remember? So. That was a many
yes.
years ago.
Yes, it was.
I want to say before 2000. I could be wrong. 98. I don't know. Whatever year it was. They played Duke in the championship. I know that. Mm-hmm. And this is inside baseball, but it scared the hell out of me at the time. So we covered the tournament. I had a minor role, probably a sidebar writer or something like that at the time. And I have covered Final Fours. I went to Seattle. In fact, I was there when your Michigan Wolverines won.
Yes.
With
1989.
Yeah,
Ramil Robinson hit the free throws.
Ramil Robinson and the free throws. That's right. Controversial, but the right call. Yeah. So I was there for that. But anyway, so I'm covering the Final Four, and we get to the championship game. So I don't have any role for the championship game. I'm pretty far down on the pecking order, and because I'm kind of freeloading a little bit because I was covering the Bucks at the time. But so my job. So you know how magically after Super Bowls or NCAA tournaments, especially back in the day, that you see somebody holding up a newspaper that says, so and so wins, right?
Yep.
It's like, how did they get this done? Like, wow, this is amazing. What a turnaround. How did they know? So that's all pre-production, right? So you do this cover, and you want publicity. Basically, it's a marketing tool for your newspaper. And so you got a stack of these things that you're going to hand out as soon as the game's over, right? But it's kind of like those T-shirts that they have, on Sports Illustrated sells that, after the Super Bowl, you wonder what happens to the T-shirts for the other team.
Yep.
And they send them to Haiti or something like that. Well, it's similar principle is that you're going to print front page covers for the sports section with Duke, right? And then a front page cover with UConn winning and a big picture of one of their stars or whatever taken early in the tournament. And it looks like, well, that's it. There they are at Tropicana Field. How did they do it? However, if there's one thing you don't want, it's the Dewey defeats Truman edition hanging around, right? So we had these duffel bags. I don't know how this is clearly pre 9/11. We had these duffel bags stuffed with these newspapers, right? And I had the one that was UConn, and Bruce Lowett, my former colleague, had Duke. And we had great seats right near the floor because when the game was over, our job was to distribute whoever won the game. The loser, take the bag and leave, right? Don't let them out of your sight. Don't let one of those get on the floor like, and the threat was, it was like, yeah, if these get out and it's the wrong one, you're fired. I was like, wait, what? Why would I want to do this job? It's just like, this is way too much risk for reward, man. I know I got a good seat near the baseline, but this is ridiculous. I'm going to get fired? What? And so as fate would have it, of course, I couldn't just walk out with a bag. UConn wins. And we had this headline, UConn, you can. I'm not sure if I'm fond of it or not, but I didn't come up with it. So I had this giant headline. I had the UConn player, and I had the cover, and the UConn wins. And so I take my bag, a little satchel, right? And the first thing I want to do is, I feel like, well, if I hand it to the pep band, they're there behind the goalpost there, behind the goal, that they'll all go crazy. They're jumping up and down, and they'll be happy to take these things, right? And then I'll make my way onto the court where there's a little bit of a scrum and try to give it to a player, or maybe one of those people will give it to a player. So I grabbed my bag, and I got a big stack of these things, man. I'm handing them out, and as soon as I reach out over to hand one to the band guy, a cop grabs my wrist. I swear to God, St. Petersburg police. And now I'm thinking, yeah, I didn't think that would happen. Like, wait a minute, man. What are you doing? And I told him who I was. I was like, hey, no, I'm just handing out, like, this is the Tampa Bay Times, like St. Petersburg Times, like and then he let me go. But I thought, that dude's he's going to grab his handcuffs. Like, this is going to be a big thing. So just so in case my editor is listening, I don't think we do these anymore. But if we do, I don't want that job. Okay, I'm done with the commemorative, championship sections that you see every newspaper try to do back in the day. First of all, now they're probably too much to print, to be honest with you.
Would that have been a front page story? Reporter arrested for handing out newspapers at the Final Four.
Oh yeah, we'd have done a cover of the cover, right? Of me handing out the cover.
Instead of UConn, it would be.
I would just be CO. I would be UConn and the con.
Yeah,
CON.
Yeah,
the convict. Yeah, UConn and UConvict. That's what it would be. Crazy story, right? Anyway, Lightning play tonight, do they? Yeah.
They do, trying to break their 2-game losing streak. They're in Philly, face the Flyers.
Nikita Kucherov is out, right? Is he done?
Well, we don't know. He left Tuesday's game in the third, or didn't come out for the third period. The Lightning did not have practice on Wednesday, so no update. So hopefully at the morning skate this morning, we'll find out if Kucherov's good to go tonight. But they're playing the Flyers, who are a mess right now.
Are they?
They are. This is game 6 of a 7-game homestand for the Flyers. They are 0-5 on the homestand so far.
Woof. Is that Tortorella's team?
It is.
Yikes.
So this is a game, Lightning, one, you don't want to lose 3 in a row.
You got to get that one, yeah.
But you'd like to get points out of this game. So,
yeah, help the roadie a little bit, help the road trip. Get your mailbag questions in. We got time for those tomorrow. You can do that on Twitter or X at SportsDayTB. You can reach me at NFL Stroud, or my email address is rstroud@tampabay.com. Thanks for listening. For Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.